Friends, if you are a renter who lives in a small space, who is looking for budget-friendly solutions to zhuzh up your space that you haven't seen before, then lucky you, I have 10 fun new ideas you might want to try. Welcome to another episode of LaughCryDIY. I am your host, Katie, and I am here to make your decorating journey easier. Whether you are a DIYer, whether you are feeling very lazy, whether you are on a tight budget or have a very restrictive rental, I am always looking for fun, cool home decor ideas to give you inspiration. And today I am coming to you with a roundup of 10 cool ideas I have seen recently that have really inspired me. And today's ideas are specifically for people who live in small spaces. Again, whether you're a renter or an owner, we can all use help maximizing our space. And per usual, all the ideas I'm going to share today are easy to DIY, they're easy to thrift, they're easy to adapt to whatever your style, taste, or space is. But they are all very fun, cool, and clever. So without further ado, let's dive in. This is one for my lazy folks who don't feel like they are that design or DIY inclined. And that is doing a long, low shelf. And when I say low, I mean like very low to the ground. This is a great idea for a few reasons. First of all, it's super low, so it actually helps maximize a vertical space and make any room feel that much larger, especially if you're in something like a studio. Also, being low to the ground, you don't see all that clutter and stuff kind of higher up at eye level, so it also makes it feel a little bit cleaner. I love that using a low shelf like this allows you to add more decor on top as well. Here are some beautiful examples. I absolutely love this low bookshelf here with the plants on top. It's a perfect example of double duty furniture that helps you maximize your space, and something like this can easily work as a hallway bench as well. Here's another fantastic version of that. I love this because it's actually a double shelf, and I will point out how cool it is that they arranged those books in this sort of like S-curve sculptural shape. That's another great way to use existing decor you have, but make it that much more interesting and that much more intentional. And I think these are especially effective when they go really low and really long, like the full length of a wall. It just adds that much more storage. It's kind of unintrusive as opposed to a much larger, longer cabinet. And again, you can use the two tiers to store more things. Also, these are a fantastic, easy, lazy DIY opportunity if you use decorative cinder blocks. Here's a perfect example of that. They literally just got a slab of wood and a beautiful cinder block. It's a very subtle, simple thing, but I think it's especially great in small bedrooms, dorm rooms, hallways if you have the space. And again, you can customize it to like whatever style you like, but the fact that it basically gives you a little second shelf around the room is like for small space storage. And you can get really creative with this. You can source scrap wood from like the lumber yard. You can repurpose old shelves that you don't use anymore. If you have like a cabinet that's breaking down, like an old IKEA one, just like take the shelves out and pop it on the floor like that. Obviously, you want to make sure it's stable, but I think it's a really great way to mix up and use materials in, again, a very unobtrusive visual way. So, long, low shelves, do it, and send me a picture. I know I say that in every video, but I mean it. This next one is something I have not seen before, but I cannot wait to DIY it. When you live in a small space, when you're a renter, you don't always have the footprint to have a lot of large furniture for convenience, be that nightstands or side tables or whatever. In which case, sometimes you need to put your like furniture on the wall. And in this case, I would highly recommend this adorable little Murphy drink table. This is the cutest little flip down table meant to house like a little drink or maybe a little coffee mug. And this is one of those DIYs that I'm so jealous I didn't think of, but I cannot wait to dupe. And honestly, I don't have many more example photos of it other than this one, but I will link the tutorial below. But this is such a cute idea, and it's so smart to tuck into small places, whether you have like a small little banquette in a dining room or a super small bedroom where you can't really fit in side tables, but you want something like this to maybe charge your phone or hold a glass of water. It's super easy to DIY from any materials, especially something like thrifted frames. This is also something you could add if you have kind of like a meditation altar space and you want something to like put a little candle on. You could also potentially use a little piece of art that folds down like that to, I don't know, like hold little toilet paper in a really tiny bathroom. even something in your kitchen. You could make multiple around them to like tuck around your house. And again, they're really light, really easy to put on the wall. Obviously you want to be mindful of weight restrictions, but it is actually really convenient if you just need a little extra ledge to put something on, honestly, anywhere. And I don't know about you, but I also really love like whimsy or fun or unexpected items. So if you had like a beautiful little piece of art that's secretly like folded down like that, it would be such a fun kind of witchy, whimsical thing that I think your guests would get a huge kick out of. Now, while we're talking about camouflaging items, in a space, let's also talk about another common challenge in a small space or a rental, and that is radiators. Sometimes air conditioners, sometimes awkward things that jut out of the wall. Sometimes they're functional, sometimes they're non-functional, but it's always helpful in a small space to maximize every inch of every part of your home. And so I think things like radiator covers can be a really great opportunity to do that. And I will specifically shout out this incredible radiator cover that belongs to the London interior designer Phoebe Holland. She created this beautiful little wood and metal studded piece, which works as a perfect second shelf. It's a brilliant way to transform something that is either an eyesore or just simply unfunctional in a really cool way. But there are other ways you can do this. Here we have a small little wall-mounted shelf ledge and a little kind of cafe curtain skirt to cover it up. And obviously they sell more decorative versions you can source on places like Etsy and stuff. But I've also seen a lot of really cool DIY versions. Again, I would say the same thing to cover a little AC unit or something like weird that sticks out of the wall that just is kind of an eyesore. But I will say, if there were an Oscars for interior design, this episode I would award it to Phoebe Holland's custom radiator cover. I love people thinking outside of the box like that and getting super creative and customized. And something like that is pretty simple and very low effort, so I say there's no reason not to. Now, continuing our discussion about camouflaging items that you might not want out or you don't necessarily have room to be out full time, I am a very big fan of fold down desks for a few reasons. Number one, they are very small and very unobtrusive. Little units like this that are practically suitcase size are just perfect for really small spaces or multi-use where you might want a flexible layout to change things around, whether you need to work or entertain or stuff like that. Something like this is great, again, because it both flips out and you can use that top portion as a second shelf to display decor and things like that. That also makes it feel cozy even when it's folded up. I also love that these are a great opportunity to add a little hit of personality, whatever your design style is. I love this adorable little pop of blue paired with this cute striped office chair. I think this is an adorable little combo, especially in a white room like this, where you want to be really intentional about where you put your color or pattern. And while we're talking about personality and things like that, when you live in a small space, apartment, studio, whatever, it is really important to design separate, distinct zones, no matter how small your space is. And those little flip tops can do a good job of that. I want to show you one more example. This isn't actually a flip top per se, but I want to point out that they created a totally distinct zone here by putting painted pegboard on the wall and pairing it with this little corner desk. That is a perfect solution for renters who can't paint but want to create a cute little distinct zone via color. Those painted pegboards are such a smart hack and super budget friendly. I think they're like 30 bucks for a 4x8 at the hardware store, and you can paint them any color and again, maximize your functionality and use by actually using the pegboard portion. And you can put these fold down desks honestly anywhere, especially in a kitchen. If you have a very small space and you want to create kind of a single little dining table moment, that's a great way to do it. And again, just for me, I'm always going to suggest doing a fun little pop of color, but it's your house and I respect whatever you want to do. Now that said, a lot of us do work from home. A lot of us do want clever ways to create a more little distinct office space. And I think one of the greatest ways you can do that is with folding screens. Here are some cool examples of using folding screens in an office area to do double duty. This can be used both behind the desk as a bulletin board, and it can be pulled out to be used as a divider in other ways if you have guests over or if you're using the space in a different way. Here's another pegboard example, which I think is great as well. I love that you can add things like hooks and shelves to that to make it more versatile and flexible. They also make folding screens that are shelves, which is super helpful for storing things like books or office supplies or even crafting supplies. You can move it around everywhere. You can take it to your next spot, and you don't have to invest in something like a really large bookshelf or like large standing unit. And to be honest, maybe I should change the name of this channel to LaughCryDIY folding screens, because I love them so much and I talk about them so much, but only because they are such an underused and underappreciated piece of furniture. All right, moving on. While we're on the subject of folding screens and dividers, there are things sometimes you want to camouflage. Sometimes there's zones you want to separate. Sometimes there are zones you want to make feel cozy and closed in. And I've talked a lot on the channel before about using curtains to do that. But there is another underutilized piece of decor to do that, and that is Japanese Noren curtains. These are traditional Japanese fabric curtains that are meant to be like hung in a doorway or a window or between a room. And they're not that commonly utilized, but they are such a budget-friendly and very chic hack to introduce some division without having to install full curtains. What I love about them is that they're very simple, very clean, but they can add a lot of character to the space and become a very beautiful piece of functional decor. Here's a simple example of this beautiful circular pattern. It practically looks like a framed art piece in this dining room, but it makes such an impact while, again, being functional. Here's another gorgeous example. You'll note these are very easy to attach with a simple little tension curtain rod, kind of like cafe curtains. But bringing in these different textures, different colors, different patterns, and even different heights, you can see this doesn't go all the way to the floor, can really add a lot of decor to this space in a really unobtrusive way. Here's another more dramatic example, but I think they're a great way to make a big impact in a small space, especially if you don't have a lot of room for things like artwork. I will link some cool Etsy finds below if you're curious to look at these, but again, they're very easy to DIY. You can totally customize the style and pattern and the texture you use. But I will say, if you're more of a minimalist person, I think the really simple, just like 2-panel design is really, really nice, and you can use it in a lot of ways throughout your house. Now, continuing our camouflage talk. Sometimes in a small space, you want to hide things, but you can't necessarily do it with a piece of decor or a piece of furniture or some other hack. In which case, I think one unexpected medium you can turn to camouflage things is plants. I have seen some cool examples of people hiding the kind of exposed piping under their bathroom sinks with plants. I think this is really unexpected, but very clever and a great way to introduce a natural material. Obviously here they have filled this little shelf with some beautiful plants, which adds nice greenery. But if your sink doesn't have a built-in vanity like this, you can also just put in something like these large snake plants, which are just tucked right underneath. They're super large, they do a great job of hiding. Here's another example of that with this beautiful fern tucked under the sink. But it's really a great use of space that is completely dead otherwise. Now, obviously you want to make sure you use the right plants, you want to make sure you're not blocking plumbing or something like that. But I love the idea of maximizing space, especially dead spaces like that we never think about. And I will say, I have heard people say that the key to a really joyful, full of life home is to have a plant, aka a living thing in every room. And even if you don't have a window in your bathroom, which a lot of people don't, there are plants that can still survive and might even like the humidity. So I think there are opportunities to get creative. And personally, I just think plants as camouflage is one of the coolest. And speaking of plants, I've talked about this on the channel before, but using trellises is a really cool and unique way to introduce kind of a material and a texture and even a pattern into your space in a highly functional way. For example, here they kind of took that folding screen idea, but they used this cool little trellis on the wall and added hanging shelves to keep plants, as well as some artwork, things like that. If you're not a pegboard person, this is another very cool, very cheap, highly customizable way to create a storage situation. Here's another great example of doing that. Again, you could add hooks to something like this to store purses or shopping bags or little fruit baskets. Obviously, they used this to hang plants, which is a great thing to do if you're in a small space and you can't have a lot of plants taking up footprint on the ground. I did this myself in this very dining room in which I'm sitting. I couldn't have plants on the floor, so I actually built vertical trellises to hang them on. If you're interested, I will link that episode below. But again, what I think is so great is that they're really, really cheap. Again, you can get like a 4x8 piece at the hardware store for like, I think less than 50 bucks. You can easily nail or screw them into the wall and then hang anything you want on them. Now, sometimes in your house, there are things you want to show off, sometimes there are things you want to hide, and sometimes there are things you just want to make cuter. And one thing I'm seeing more and more that I think is really cute is fabric curtains in glass cabinets. If you have kitchen cabinets or some sort of like pantry shelving situation, using little cafe curtains inside is an adorable way to hide things and add personality. Here's a perfect example of these adorable green striped curtains. It's such a subtle thing, but it's a great way to add a pop of color or pattern to make your kitchen feel that much more cozy. This is super budget friendly, super renter friendly. Whether you like stripes, solid colors, even some other subtle little pattern, it's very flexible, very customizable. I've also seen people do that with things like burlap or cane or other textured materials. And I love that for things like this, you can thrift bed sheets or even pillowcases, super cheap fabric. You can grab it from the store. You can grab little swatches online. It's great because it doesn't require a ton of fabric, but it does make a very cute, very big impact. And lastly, today I want to talk about one of the most underused and overlooked places in a rental, especially if you're in a sort of small apartment building, and that is your little balcony or patio. If you are lucky enough to have one, no matter how tiny it is, I think this is a great way to express your personality and make it another extension of your home in a big way. Here's a perfect example. This is such a tiny space, but you can see they have added so much personality by adding these patterned tiles below. You can easily do that with an indoor-outdoor throw rug. You can also buy outdoor flooring that's meant to be clicked together. And by adding this little chair and this adorable little ottoman and a little side table, you have created the smallest but cutest little lounge space for very little money. Here's another great example of doing that. Nice little rug. That tiny coffee table also makes a big difference, as does these adorable little shelves. And I will say, no matter how ugly your space is, you can absolutely totally transform it. I did a renter-friendly balcony makeover where I put up faux striped walls. We lay down AstroTurf and we turned it into the cutest little Miami-inspired balcony. When you have a small space, especially an outdoor balcony, you have such an opportunity to thrift and Facebook Marketplace. You can DIY stuff out of cinder blocks. You can convert benches. You can just put outdoor pillows all over the place. On this channel, I also once made a very long runner out of a bunch of placemats to go down the length of an apartment balcony. You can get these tiny, tiny little flip down tables, perfect for holding a little journal or holding a little mug. It takes very little to kind of zhuzh up those outdoor spaces, but I think they're so worthwhile, especially if you can add plants, especially if you can add a little seating area. But I guess what I'm saying is just don't neglect your balcony. It loves you and it wants to be loved. So there you have it, my darlings. Those are today's 10 tips, inspirations, ideas. I can't wait to DIY that little Murphy cup holder on my channel. Definitely will see that in a future episode. But per usual, I will link my full playlist of all of my decor tips below, as well as room makeovers, as well as any other videos or links I mentioned today. As always, if you guys have seen really cool stuff in the decor world lately, please send it to me, email me, DM, send a carrier pigeon. You guys inspire me as much as I inspire you, and I love our little creative community. So until next time, have fun, get creative, try new stuff, stretch your boundaries, and build your dream home no matter how small it is. Okay, bye.